scholarship. That's a really big thing for our families because now we're a tuition-based preschool. But besides accepting DES, that Quality First Assessment Scholarship is a very large piece. All during the school year, we've been working on new curriculum and investigation as part of our ADE Equip plan. So that's another thing that we've been working on, and that's for community and developmental, and we are coming to the end of that. And then finally, building the Montessori program, primary and elementary, which, as I said before, Ms. Pearson touched on the Montessori program at the previous board meeting. So the first part that I'm actually very anxious about, because we're waiting for a score, I've checked it like 4 times today, is the Quality First Scholarships. 3 of our programs, Solano, Longview, and Encanto, right now, Montessori is not eligible. That's something that I'm thinking about and looking into, just making sure that it's developmentally appropriate for the children and the program in general. Receive Quality First assessments. And then based on those assessments, they have the opportunity to obtain scholarships for free preschool from Quality First, First Things First, and Southwest Human Development Head Start, that give us support personnel for like inclusive services and mental health support for the children as well. So this year, after a long wait, Solano received 4 stars. I'm so excited, Miss Natalie. Woo-hoo. It's a very intense process. So the goal is to get 2 assessments. The first assessment is called the ECHRS, and basically in a nutshell, it is the Environmental Classroom Rating Scale, where they literally do come and count every block you have. So before even they come, I am also in there counting every block they have. You have to have like 5 different types of blocks and different types of materials, and it's very intense. So in order to qualify for the 2 tests, you have to get at least a 3 on the first Environmental Classroom Rating Scale. And once you get at least a 3, that qualifies you for the second assessment, which is called the CLASS, which is mostly conversations, classroom environment, interactions. If you only get the one, if you qualify for both, you at least score a 3, and that means you're a quality program. But Solano, Miss Marina, Miss Natalie did a fantastic job. They had fantastic scores, and that got them a 4 out of 5. And a 5 is very hard to achieve, and a 4 is very hard to achieve. There are many centers that do not even qualify for the two tests. So with that their star rating goes up. It's public. It goes on all the websites when families are looking for care for their children. So they went from a quality rating to a quality plus. This year, based on previous years and previous participation in Quality First, they had 4 scholarships, so 4 children could go for free based on application and qualification. But next year, because of that, they received 10. So that's fantastic. It's tremendous for our children. And then the merit money and the incentive money they get goes up significantly for additional materials in their classroom. Longview, from, almost 3 years ago, COVID kind of put a spin on our assessments. Longview is still waiting for an assessment. We have not heard yet. They're kind of over their cycle period, but we're just still kind of waiting. So the previous score they had was 3. They currently have 5 scholarships, but because they've been in the program for a long time also, and we've been a participant in Quality First while also bringing in another center, they move up to 11 scholarships, so that's fantastic for them. The other nice thing about Quality First scholarships is that if I notice there are many children at Longview who are ready for a scholarship and Solano hasn't used all theirs, you can transfer them, so that's fantastic. Finally, Encanto will be a 3-star minimum. Maestra Sochi has already had her assessment, and they did qualify for the second assessment, which they've had, but I'm checking the portal every day, twice a day, waiting for the score to drop. So that's why it's like 3, maybe 4. maybe 5. We'll see. But regardless, anything, you're shooting for at least 3. So anything above is just a cherry on top. The teachers in our community preschool work so hard. I feel so lucky because with having 4 different schools that I go to, they are capable and competent beyond, but I feel very lucky with that way. So she does not have scholarships yet at Encanto. They cannot be transferred from Solano and Longview because she has not gone through a complete assessment cycle yet. She could get scholarships next year based on funding and based on her star rating. Thank you. These are just some cute pictures that Miss Natalie shared. There was a partnership with Lowe's, and they came to build out some new gardens. So I just wanted to share that along. And then if you go to the next one. One of the other big things with Montessori and actually preschool is just care of the environment, things in the environment. So they do a lot of gardening and then cultivating and, tasting their wares. So the other part that I just wanted to make note of was our exploration of curriculum. Even before I came on as the preschool master teacher, the program had been using something called creative curriculum. And then when I came back as preschool master teacher, we kind of were looking at the curriculum, noticing that it was starting to get kind of dated. We took with it what we could. And so coming into this year, I thought, you know what, let's look at a new curriculum because why not? If not me, then who? Let's do it. So we've been sort of exploring. We had 4 that we kind of initially began with. One of them I determined it was more of a supplemental. So we have the benchmark Ready to Advance, which, as you know, is part of what we have in the district anyway for the rest of the students. Learning Without Tears, which is part of Handwriting Without Tears, which we determined further on didn't have all the needs that we needed, and it was possibly more of a supplemental. McGraw-Hill World of Wonder, and then our current program, Creative Curriculum. So taking out creative curriculum, because we just determined we're ready to try something new that maybe has more social emotional components and readiness skills, and then taking out Learning Without Tears, we had PDs with each of the representatives from Benchmark and McGraw-Hill. We are doing our exploration as a part of our EQUIP requirement for ADE. So we've been sort of at this process with various meetings. Each of the teachers has been testing out and doing trial learning with the children, making sure that it's appropriate for them and the needs of our learners in both developmental and community, with the exception of Montessori. So we just recently had another meeting to talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of our pros and cons of both series, and are talking through that, and then hopefully we'll be able to come to a conclusion and determine our path forward by the end of the year. And so this was just one more little picture that I have for you, just care of the environment. This is one of the things that during assessment, they do look for these things. So Miss Natalie's got them all, so she deservedly got that 4-star. And speaking of Miss Natalie, you've heard me say her name a few times. First off, I feel very lucky having the teachers that we have in preschool. I think it is the hardest thing to teach. Everybody says that, but I think when you throw 3- and 4-year-olds into it, there are many rules and regulations, and the teachers in preschool, they have it down. Their classrooms are beautiful, and the best place for a 3- and 4-year-old to learn, in my opinion, is in one of our programs. So I'm lucky that today 2 of our points of pride are here. The first one, Miss Natalie Wehrman, has been one of our preschool teachers. She actually started off as an assistant. And when the opportunity opened up, it just was natural. She didn't initially think it was natural to go to be a lead teacher, but it was. When she was at Montecito, it was just fantastic. She's just a gift to those children. I always talk about how she uses natural materials and they make nests and they make robots out of, environmental things and going outside the box. So she started as an assistant and she demonstrated just amazing and fantastic skills. And so thankfully she agreed that going to being a lead teacher was a great next step for her. She's hardworking and she researches and brings new learning into the classroom for the children, as well as really helping develop their social emotional skills. And in general, she strives for excellence for herself, continuing to work on advanced learning for herself. So I feel thankful. I know that Solano is thankful. She's an easy point of pride because she's just so hardworking and dedicated, and Osborne is lucky to have her based on her dedication. So thank you, point of pride, Miss Natalie Weirman. Thank you. Come on up. Come on up. Thank you, Miss Natalie. I won't hug you because of COVID. But I'll hug you later. Thank you. Yes. we won't do it in front of the board. I'll hug you another time. Marina Wright is another one of our points of pride, who has also been in our district for many years, working as an assistant, and she is also working on her advanced degree, also her bachelor's degree. And she's been in the program for many years as well. Because we are a dual language program, she is the teacher on record for the Spanish component, and she is able to bring to life Spanish for families and students that don't have that in their home, as well as encouraging the continuation of the language for families that do. She works tirelessly to support the children in that development, besides the emotional support that she also gives them in the classroom. She works with Miss Natalie. And having those two in the community program itself, they are fantastic role models for new teachers who are still navigating what community preschool really looks like, because we know there are a lot of requirements. So Miss Marina was not able to be here, but I will be giving her certificate and pin next week when I go see them. Finally, we have one of our long-standing developmental teachers here, Miss Itzel Garcia, who is at Longview, who teaches developmental preschool. Miss Garcia she's one that she always has a smile on her face. She is kind and flexible and open-minded when a task or a question comes up. Being that she's been the longest developmental teacher, preschool teacher, other teachers will go and see her to see how she runs her classroom, and there's a reason for that. She is collaborative with the new teachers, and she is kind and open to any questions that they have. And when they go into her room, they see how she is always positive and supportive and getting the children, giving them best practice based on their developmental needs. It's astounding. I love going in there. You can't leave without a smile on your face. In general, she has a great attitude, and I can see why she is loved at Longview, because she's loved here too. So come on up, Miss Garcia. Thank you. I wish I could have a million Miss Garcias and Miss Weirmans, because the world would be so much easier. Thank you so much. Do I have to ask questions?
Well, if the board has any questions, which they may.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation.
Yes.
Wonderful. I've got a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, so this is a very much kind of something that I think about or get asked a lot of questions in the community about.
Yes.
The developmental preschool, that's just half day, is that right?
It is. It is
Okay.
2 sections of half day. There's a morning section and an afternoon section.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 33 students, it's half in the morning, half in the afternoon?
Not necessarily half in the morning. It really depends on their developmental need. Sometimes it's chunked based on looking. I guess the easiest way to say is like looking at their IEPs and grouping students who have needs that are similar.
Okay.
So they might be in the morning, and then students who might be like in one, I guess let's say in one circumstance, there are a group of students in one developmental room who are going to be going to kindergarten next year, so they are chunked together
Okay.
so that they can work on additional kinder readiness skills. So 33 just encompasses all of them because there's not a set. There might be like 5 in the morning and it sells room and like 3 in the afternoon. And so sometimes there is fluctuation as you get to know the students and determine what's best for their developmental needs. But 33 just encompasses all of the classes.
All the
Yeah,
students.
they're
Okay.
not necessarily divided evenly.
Sure, thank you. And then the 42 students in the community preschool, that's Encanto, Longview, and Solano. Is that, I was just talking to a parent from
Yes.
Solano,
Yes.
who Solano they have 2 and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds at the community school, or
No, so in general, the community preschool enrolls students who are 4 that will be going to preschool, going to kindergarten the next fall. There are situations where there are 3-year-olds who can enter if their birthday falls within like September to December. Usually the 3-year-olds that are accepted have an earlier fall birthday. The max is 60 because 20 is the most that we can have in any of the classrooms. But yeah, so there's not like a 3-year-old classroom. So in one of the classrooms, there are mostly 4-year-olds and there's like 2 3-year-olds who entered but had a birthday
like a
September
September.
or October. Yeah.
So mostly kind of generally 4-year-olds. Is there any thought, or I guess, how do we expand this? 'Cause I love everything I'm hearing. This is fantastic. And how can we expand from 42 students in the community preschool and 33 in development? How do we grow that? And I'll give you a little context, because my oldest daughter is one of these kids that got to started Encanto when she was 2, because they used to be this
Little Big
partnership.
Minds.
Little
Yeah,
Big
because
Minds,
I was at Encanto for like, 17 years.
You
Yeah.
probably saw her walking
Yeah.
around, and so we got to. It was a beautiful thing because I see a lot of her friends that had gone there and and continued. I don't have the numbers. Probably Mr. Kranza probably does, but a good amount, I think, of the parents kind of kept the kids in the school there, even if they live out of district. And I think it really does help kind of build this community early on, especially because parents are always looking for preschools for their 2 and 3-year-olds. So how do we grow this and expand this to some younger kids, more kids? What are your thoughts on that? And if we can grow this, I be the one doing the tap dancing around here. So
Ooh, are you gonna help me grow then? Because I'm always open
would
to
love
help.
to.
I'm tap dancing a lot with Montessori right now. So I'm always open to expanding. It's kind of one of those, I like a good challenge. One of the reasons why I've been working so hard with Montessori, because I like to work on things and projects where our community and our children benefit. There are like logistical things that I always think of first, besides like licensing and space. Like I was just at Encanto, and so like if I think about Encanto, I would love to be able to give that opportunity to families, but I also have to be realistic. Where do we want to put them? Where do we want to put those families? And we can always find room. One thing that I also think, especially with recent, well, there are 2 things. Right now, there is a new grant down the pipe for preschool. Not that we would necessarily get it. So I always think, how can we make it affordable for families? Because I don't want to assume that every family is going to easily be able to pay for a preschool situation. So I think about like realistic things. I would love to be able to put additional preschools at all of the campuses. But then my planning brain thinks, I want to make sure that we have qualified staff that are, highly qualified staff, ample space for the children, and appropriate room licensing, curriculum development. So these are just kind of things I always think about. I think that if we kind of get some of the logistics down, like if we are able to license a room, then we can reach out to families, because a lot of our families have siblings, younger siblings, and so those can be automatics.
Yeah.
Especially if there's an affordability piece to it, because I don't want to assume that, we've had many families this year who have had to leave us because of that affordability piece, because we've only had 4 or 5 scholarships. While we take DES subsidies, for some families, even $5 a day is really hard. So if we are able to do more with Quality First, it's possible that we can, get additional scholarships and then continue to expand. But I also I would have to see who also can see this vision. Because I mean, if it's a vision of everyone, I can go for it. I can run with it. I have pretty good relationships with some of the.
If I can just hop in
Yeah.
real quick
Yeah.
too. Part of the thinking, and you've asked the question, Mr. Kronza actually asked me
Yeah.
a question about expanding to 3-year-olds. And part of the answer that I had for him was, we want to be thinking that way, but we're not going to make moves without careful planning. So when we look at the opening of the Montessori classroom, we were about 12 to 18 months of planning before that classroom actually opened. We also have to look at the programs that we do have and the success. Now, we see the 3 and 4 and possibly in the future 5-star ratings that we're getting. So we're not, in terms of the educational output side, we're looking great in terms of output there. But on the financial side, we're not operating our preschools in a financially beneficial position for the district right now. So if we're, it is not a program that's funded through the state. It's a program that's funded through either those DES subsidies that are coming in or parents paying tuition.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to run a program that we can afford.
Yeah.
And that includes the salaries, the materials, and everything that goes into it. So right now, we need to establish greater stability with the program that we have now before we can think about expanding to other areas. So it is definitely in consideration. And with the question being asked, part of my response was, we can take the steps towards the thinking and planning for it, but not for next fall. Because we will just be setting ourselves up to not being able to put out a sustainable program from day one.
Thank you for that, and I'm glad it's being explored. And I mean, my thought, just real quick on it, is if we operate, I guess I would be okay operating on a little bit of a loss when it comes to preschool, if with the thought of we're getting our hooks in these kids early at 3 years old, 4 years old, they're going to stay in the district. That's going to be long-term, enrollment, which is going to more than pay for itself over the course of that kid's career from K through middle school, hopefully, as that kid stays in. So I kind of look at it in context of our overall enrollment goals. I'm glad that's being looked at. I definitely agree. Let's make it for everybody. It sounds like the scholarship is a big component of that. But thank you so much for the presentation. I just would encourage you to continue to look at that because, I've got a 4 and a 5-year-old, so I interact with a lot of kids a lot of parents with small kids, and that's probably the number one question I get is, when can we expand our preschool offerings to, 2 and 3-year-olds, or at least 3-year-olds?
That idea of looking at the investment that you're making in your future students, we definitely are thinking about it that way and have actually been running a program that's been at a deficit, but seeing the advantage that has in terms of those future students coming in. But when you have a program that has more expenditures than revenues, you have to look at how sustainable that is. So, we do that with all of our different funds, from indirect costs to the whole, gamut of funds. We look at how much we're bringing in this year, how much we're looking to spend next year. And if you're spending more than you're taking in, we look at that and say, okay, we can afford to do that over the next 3 or 4 years. But if we go beyond that, then we have to start looking at, can we start generating more revenues? 1 or 2 years, we can do it. The first year that we went without a preschool grant, we fully funded it. And we also took a fund and brought it down to practically nothing.
Yeah.
But we had, we wanted to kickstart, we didn't want to see an elimination of a program. So we fully funded it in the year that we were developing pay structures and those types of things so that we could be regenerating revenues. So we are looking at that. We definitely recognize that preschool is an investment, not only in kids, but in the future of the district. But we have to look at how long we can maintain such a, that type of structure.
Yeah, we do have the one program that does accept 3-year-olds, which is the Montessori program. Not that everybody, although I would love to take every 3-year-old into Montessori if they so desire. But yeah, like, and it does take a substantial amount of time. In general, I'm looking to license another room at Montessori, and that's going to take me all summer starting now. So it's just sort of like a future thought that won't go away. But yeah, it definitely takes a bit of time.
I have,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, we're just looking at pictures of Felix in preschool.
I still have his little baseball. I have his little baseball card on my refrigerator still.
The bird feeders. I loved volunteering and doing all the garden activities. He's going to high school soon, so time flies. But I do have questions about the Montessori program.
Okay, we'll see if I can answer them all, but luckily Dr. Bear's here too. Go for it.
So, and a comment too. I had a board member from Phoenix, Al, asked me how we're offering a free Montessori program. And I'm like, well, it's not free.
Nope.
So I explained how
No.
that worked. But I'm like, oh, that's good that she knows
Yeah.
that it exists. So for next year, do we already have students enrolled for this current class, and then we're going to grow a new class? Is that what's going to happen? Like they're moving up to,
Yeah, so next,
and do
yes.
we have 3-year-olds enrolled?
Yeah, so right now, we sort of have like a wait list for the primary classroom number 2.
Okay.
Because we need to fill that before we can officially accept anyone. Miss Terry, who is our primary teacher right now, she is full with 5-year-olds, because those are her current 4-year-olds. And then she is full with 4-year-olds,
Okay.
who are currently the 3-year-olds. So right now, we're filling her room with 3-year-olds. And then we are working to also gather 3-year-olds for the second primary room, which already has a wait list for 5-year-olds. I have a list of like 6 kids that have already inquired. I did a tour today, got them. I did 2 yesterday, got them both. There's a lot of tours at Montecito lately. And then, so that primary room, really a big focus of students that we're looking for are 3-year-olds. But I've done fairs lately. I know the administrative team has done fairs lately. And then we're also working on some advertising to a local moms group that has 15,000 members. Besides me putting up flyers here and there wherever I can. As far as the elementary, the Lower Elementary, right now we have 10 students, 5 first graders and 5 second graders that are on the list for that group.
Just my last question, are we getting enough referrals from DS?
There are not many.
Okay.
Yeah, so many of the children, or I guess recently that have been coming to do tours and to sign up are not DES cases, although some are. And I tell every family that enters, regardless of economic status, because I know not of that, I always refer them to DES if they're a primary family, if they need that support. And they can, I also mentioned that they can use DES child care subsidies for the aftercare program as well. So sometimes that, knowing that they can also use it for that is also helpful to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one comment. I think it is absolutely unbelievable how much this district has done with the crap that we've been given for 2 years for them to, I mean, like in 24 hours, we got to shut down the schools, we got to do this, we got to do that because of the COVID stuff. And the fact that you guys are working together, obviously with the purpose of what's best for our children. I mean, it's just amazing to me how much time you put into it. and worrying about, is my paycheck gonna get shorter, or, it's just, you guys are just fantastic, all of you.
Well, and I actually have to give a lot of credit to the staff before. So I was just adding Canto as the reading specialist when it was the shutdown. So really kudos to all the teachers who kept on plugging away, and Romina Flores, who really, and actually all this summer, because I've been Montessori training, I was like, oh, who's gonna do all this? She's like, I got it, and we're kind of a little team like that. And so I'm back in training this summer, and she's like, I'll see what I can do, I'll see. It is just a very collaborative, especially in the preschool program, because she and I started at Montecito when it was the PDG grant. And that's how she and I sort of kind of became attached at the hip on working all things preschool. So I'm gonna relay those kudos to her as well, because she, as well as the other teachers who are here who transformed preschool to online, it's been amazing. So really, without my efforts, it's been all them.
Well, and with all the politics crap that's going on, for you guys to stay doing what you're doing, and with the intent and the purpose is just amazing, just totally amazing.
It really makes a difference. Early childhood makes a significant difference. You can tell.
Thank you, Ms. Singh.
Thank you.
And it's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's I
Always
can't-
good to
I
be
can't-
seen is
I
what
don't
I
go to
think.
Canto that often anymore, but it's hard to imagine you not being there.
You know what? It was hard for me to go, but luckily I'm there twice a month, every Wednesday, the first 2 Wednesdays of the month, so I can get my fill of Encanto in. Thank you very much. If
you.
you have other questions, just email me. Or if you're ever out and about, stop in. I'd love to give you a tour of the new things we're doing at Montecito, library updates and grants that I've been writing. So let me know. I'd be happy to show you around.
Thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll take a short recess for 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 6:14. the consent agenda. I noticed that there was
Yes. You'll notice.
to the minutes.
Yes, with the minutes, you'll notice that there's a copy of the February 21st minutes. There are two things that are highlighted in there that have been corrected. There were errors that were made on the minutes that are in the public packet that have been corrected. So if you're making your motion to approve the consent agenda, if you'll just note with corrections as amended, or however you want to state it.
And that's corrections are on the February 22nd.
Yeah, it's actually, I think, from February 21. I think, or is the, okay, okay. Got it.
Yep, got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda with corrections to the February regular meeting minutes.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will proceed to item number 5, the call to the public. We have received 2 items here.
And I've spoken with both members. Rhodey Vare, who's present, has actually elected to speak when the item comes up later on in the meeting, so we can just call up Mr. Thompson.
Which item is that?
It's going to be the COVID update.
Mr. Thompson, please join us. Well, you're the only speaker here. If you think that this will take more than 5 minutes or so, let me know, just for the interest of time. Happy to indulge that. And as this is a public comment section, we will not necessarily respond to your comments, but we welcome your feedback.
All right, well, thank you. President Flamand, members of the board, Superintendent Robert. My name is Eric Thompson. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I am the parent of a kindergartner at Encanto Elementary. I'll just say Principal Carranza, she loves going to school every day. A little too much. She wakes us up at like 5:30 and asks, all right, when can I go to school? But it's great. So it's my understanding there's going to be some openings on the board this year, come November, and I'm here to let the community and the board and the district know I intend to run for that, because as Ms. Singh said, if not me, then who? And I guess I think I could do a good job and I can help. I think Osborne is a great district, and I'm so glad that my family lives in the district and that my daughter goes to school in the district. I would just like to help continue to build on that success that the district has. I currently serve on the Osborne Education Foundation board. We're planning the Teacher of the Year event, so mark your calendars, October 22nd. It's been gone for a few years due to COVID, but we're hopefully going to bring it back. We're in the planning stages of that. I'm a CPA. I was a school district auditor for many years. Currently, I am the CFO for the Tempe Elementary School District, so I'm keenly aware of all the budget issues with indirect cost and other funds, and all right, you can do this, but you can't do that if you do this, because there's only so much money in Arizona school districts, and so I am very well aware of that, and I think that could help a board member. But more importantly, I'm a parent in the district, and I just would like to help the district build on the success that they've had, and I think my experience can help that, and it'd just be an honor if I had the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go to item number 6, presentation regarding the ASU Heat Ready program.
Yes, it is. And board members, if if you feel comfortable, and for the sake of everyone that's listening and our presenter as well, you feel free to pull down your mask when speaking. It just helps people hear you a lot better, especially the folks that are joining us online. I'd like to introduce Mary Munoz Encinas from Arizona State University, who's going to present to us about the Heat Ready program. And it's up there. Just let us know and we'll advance slides for you.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Mary.
There's a clicker for you, too.
It does work. Let's try it. Ooh, yay. All right, first win. All right, hello, everybody. I'm Mary. I'm the project coordinator for Heat Ready Schools, and we are an initiative under the Healthy Urban Environments initiative or project that currently Maricopa County is implementing. So I'll first start with the icky parts, being aware of heat risk, right? So the whole state is one of the hottest places on earth from May to September, and we certainly feel it a lot earlier and a lot later than that as well. Heat-related illness affects all of us, but of course we know that children are especially vulnerable given that they do not have the awareness still, or some of them lack the awareness to detect the signals, the signs of heat illness. About 210 children are treated each year, at least that is the number from last year, in ERs given heat-related illness. And it is the leading cause of death, unfortunately, among athletes in high school. So that's the scary situation about it. So first, we start with that. But then, we look at our schools. How are we experiencing heat in our schools? So here I have a couple of images, first showing you the heat monitoring that we conducted in a playground in South Phoenix. You can see there the stark contrast in heat given the materials that we construct our playgrounds with commonly. Also, maybe the lack of shade or cooling spaces in school. So kids have to huddle, a bunch of them, underneath one tree, and that might not be enough. Once again, exposing them to risk unwillingly. So it's called Heat Ready Schools, this initiative. What is a Heat Ready School, and why is it important to become one? So we have detected or assigned the Heat Ready designation to a school that is able to identify, prepare for, mitigate, track, and respond to the negative effects of school ground heat. Mainly in the open areas, but also we include some of the indoor as well. Our goal through this initiative is to improve the safety and protection measures for children during extreme heat days, but as I said, we feel it a lot more than just the heat season. Thermal safety and comfort are vital in having our children stay safe and engaged throughout their learning experience. And if schools, being community hubs, not just connecting teachers, families, but residents of the neighborhood in general, if they are prepared, then the community as a whole gets more prepared, and then the city as an expansion. So, why are we here? Why am I here? Because I would like to propose this plan as a partnership with Heat Ready, Maricopa County, and ASU for your school, the general, all of Osborne schools. We have key action areas, which are school policy or guidelines, the physical environment, training and education given to admin and staff, prevention in general, and engagement with the community. Through assessing the preparedness in each of these areas, we can see if your school is heat ready. Well, how do we do that? First, by entering our program, which is free of all cost to any school that would like to join. We then connect you with our community partners after conducting basically a self-assessment of your institutions. So we help you go through an evaluation based on these 5 key areas. If we find any deficiencies, then we help you raise that capacity. It is a commitment from the schools, and maybe a designated couple of staff even can be implemented with students involved. I have a couple of schools already implementing this in their sustainability curriculum because it makes them aware of their interactions with the environment and the risks that it can pose if you're not really aware of how to basically keep yourself safe in those strong heat days. So we have a website that serves as a hub for all the schools that are currently implementing this program. Schools can share their progress, their challenges, what's going right, what's going wrong, and then we can all talk about it and figure out best ways forward. We are always there as support. If you're going through that self-assessment that I mentioned and you're like, this is not really clear, we can come in and help you address those issues. And we connect you, like I said, with tools and resources from our partners, which are Arizona Department of Health and Safety, the CDC, the National Weather Service, researchers at ASU, and a lot more, really. There we go. So here are a couple of examples of the materials that we provide to classrooms when they decide to involve the students. We have already a Heat Ready rubric. That is how we conduct that self-assessment, as I mentioned. And through the different action areas, we divide them in statements. For instance, I have this tree that says, what actions can we take as a school to find external resources for improving heat preparedness? For instance, reaching out to our Heat Ready contact to see if we can secure funding for shade structures, or connect with Trees Matter, which is an organization that is fantastic for increasing shade cover in schools, again, to no cost to the district or the schools. So figuring out which action items you can take on as a school, and then which ones you would like to do, and that's where we engage in communication so that we can provide connection to the partners and resources. This is the example, or the first page really, of our Heat Ready School scorecard. This is how you conduct that assessment. And here are the recommendations or statements that create our rubric. For instance, our school has formal guidelines for heat-related actions taken within the school. So this is addressing any sort of protocol that is already in place. If you already have it, fantastic, your score goes up. If you have kind of an informal protocol that you follow when it is above 115, say, and you can't have the children go outside and have recess, well, what can we do to make it more formal, to have something actually written so that we're ready for the event of a heat wave? This, like I said, goes through the rest of our action areas. And that is essentially it in a nutshell. We are currently piloting this project with about 8 schools throughout the valley, some of them Montessori. Kudos to my Montessori teachers out there. And other public schools. We started this in South Phoenix and have seen really wonderful engagement so far, and we would like to offer it to all the schools that would like to, join in the program. The notion that heat is a natural disaster or an emergency is not really prevalent here because we're so used to the heat. We're so, it's hot, it's Arizona. However, we do have casualties each year. We do have children sent to the hospital. How can we keep our children safe, healthy, and happy in their learning environment, and also give them the tools to protect themselves from the heat as much as we can? That is essentially it. Thank you for listening, and I am here for any questions. And my contact is right there as well for you guys.
Thank you, Mary. Great presentation. I just have a quick question.
Yes.
I think this is exciting, first of all, and to do an assessment to kind of for you and your team to come in and take a look and see how we can improve. I think there is a lot of room for improvement. So if you come and do an assessment, you say, hey, we need more shade and trees, which I kind of would expect that to be on your assessment, because I certainly think we need more shade and more trees. Is that something you can also assist with in terms of like connecting and doing grants and kind of moving that ball forward in that respect?
Yes, we have partners with, like I said, Trees Matter. They are ready to jump in at any opportunity to help increase the shade cover all throughout the valley. And then, for instance, for funding, we connect you guys with grants that are available so that you can apply for funding for shade structures in your school.
Very cool. Well, how long does it take for you to do one of these assessments?
It really depends on the school. If you guys want to, spread it out through a couple of weeks, first assess the playgrounds, then assess the water fountains, then talk to the administrators and look towards the guidelines and see if there's anything. So it can take a couple days, it can take a couple weeks. We work with your timeline. We just want to make sure that everything is in place and that we can help you cover those deficiencies and build up some capacity for heat preparedness.
Got it. Wonderful. I talked to the people from the city of Phoenix, that new department. I always forget the name, heat mitigation and tree department or something like that, which is wonderful. And they're they did a grant for our neighborhood right over here to do a bunch of trees. So it's very exciting stuff. I hopefully, would love to partner with you and to help our district move in that direction.
Well, we would love that too.
So in terms of formal steps towards that, is there an MOU or anything that comes forward, or is this just, can we move forward, in terms of partnership without that formality?
We can move forward without the formality. Again, this is open to every school. We start with schools, but then centers like Boys and Girls Clubs and just other centers that would also support children in their education, but not as formally as schools. But yes, we would then send you all the materials necessary. They're also all up in our website. You create an account in our website, and that is the main tool for communication with other schools. I would be your main, front-facing contact, and you can call me for anything. Like I said, filling out the self-assessment, coming in and doing a physical audit of the space, securing some funding, getting in touch with partners for other community projects, all of that. It's all in place, you just have to ask for it. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
course.
Is the city providing any type of funds for signing up, or what is the city providing?
The city is implementing this in the neighborhood level, so it's called my project right here is Heat Ready Schools. The wider one is Heat Ready Neighborhoods and Heat Ready City.
Right.
The city connects us with funding from the state and other private corporations.
Got it. Thank you.
Given that the summer heat spans between May and August, is there, in your mind, sort of a difference in terms of thinking about how the summer break lands, sliding it one way or another from a heat perspective? In other words, is it better to end the year earlier in May, but you start sort of earlier in August?
It really
wait
depends
in
on-
June and start in September. So like, does the project have a sense of whether it's better to have the heat at the beginning or the end of the year, or both?
We do have recommendations on moving, for instance, PE in the school day, right? But the whole shifting of the academic calendar is really up to the district. It's really what works better for the families and for you guys.
No, of course,
Yeah.
but I guess you don't necessarily have any data at the moment in terms of I don't know if you're aware of any research or any thought given to sort of how.
Oh, shifting the
Yeah,
calendar?
and how it relates to
No,
heat.
not currently, but I could connect you with people that do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Right. If anything else comes up, my email is right there. Feel free to reach out with any questions, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful. And if this is an opportunity to mention it too, John, how many trees did we plant at Longview, or Dr. Gross, at Longview last week? We're doing it, 40. So it's coming up. Okay.
So we're almost a heat-ready school.
Here, here.
Almost.
Keep
We're
it up.
getting there.
Thank you.
All right.
Moving on to the next agenda item, administrative reports, item 7. Any questions or comments on the reports? And I appreciate the note about the modality changing in the next school year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just decided to hold on to the next
Yep.
school year before changing formats of any reports.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right. Item 8, we'll go through the different action items, starting with A, recommendation to approve the 22-23 employee fringe benefit plan.
Actually, can I, if I didn't talk to you about this before, but we do have item B. We have guests here, so just in the interest of their time, we've got to be here all night, but they don't necessarily have to. So I'm wondering if we might be able to move item B to the affiliation agreement.
No problem. Let's do item B, the affiliation agreement with the ASU School of Social Work.
All right, well,
we love our partnerships with ASU, and I'm excited to present yet another potential partnership with the ASU School of Social Work. And with us is Cynthia Peters, who is the Manager of Field Education, and she is going to share about this partnership.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Cynthia Peters. I manage the internship program with the School of Social Work. So the School of Social Work requires that each student in order to get their bachelor's degree or their master's degree, they need to do an internship. And the internship covers 2 semesters, 16 hours a week, 240 hours a semester. So it's about 2 days a week with the affiliated agencies. So we also require that the students do their internships in the community where they live. And so we affiliate with agencies such as school districts, hospitals, police departments, fire departments, social service agencies, homeless shelters to provide opportunities for our students to put into practice what they're learning in the classroom. So that's the internship program really quickly. So we are looking for, only thing that we require for the school, for the agencies that they provided MSW that would provide weekly supervision for the students. I don't have a PowerPoint or a song and dance
That's
for you.
totally fine.
Oh, no need.
We don't require
Great
songs.
presentation.
No,
Yeah, I taught 2 classes today, so my mind is just like all fried right now.
no worries. We love, we appreciate the partnership, the long partnership that Osborne has had with ASU in many, different departments within ASU. So you're very welcomed here. Any questions from my fellow board members?
Just a comment saying thank you. Students, they need support like this. I mean, not just, students to actually practice, but our students always need support like this. So thank you.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the affiliation agreement with ASU School of Social Work.
A second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll dance away then.
Opposed?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for allowing us to go out of order, so I'll let you put us
No
back in
worries,
order.
yeah. Going back to the fringe benefit plan.
Good evening, Board President Flamin, members of the board, Superintendent Robert, my colleagues and community members, hello, hello. It is me again, Dr. Woodland, the Director for Human Resources here within Osborne, and I'll be speaking to the recommendation to approve our 22 to 23 employee fringe benefits plans. I'll speak to the background as well as the correlating pages that follow before doing legal, financial, and then the overall recommendation. And of course, please feel free to jump in if you have questions in this regard. So in regards to the background, the Kairos Insurance Trust rates for the upcoming 22 to 23 plan reflect a 3% increase to our copay, which is our base plan, and our high deductible plans. The core plan reflected an 8% increase. I'd like to pause there and just say, in comparison to other districts in the general area, this was really good. Of a 3% overall increase, some of them had between 7 to 10, and I think the highest may have been around 11%. So ours generally being at a 3% increase was really good, with the exception of the core plan, which was at 8. In regards to employer basic life coverage, with MetLife, our coverage was based on employees' annual salary up to a maximum of $50,000, and you'll see the rate per $1,000 listed for you. In regard to employee voluntary products that are offered, you'll see those that are listed include our dental, vision, short-term disability, life insurance, flexible spending accounts, as well as our 403B and 457B retirement options, which are Roth and or other retirement accounts. And those are included in the attached documents. In regards to our vision premiums, those did decrease by 5% for the upcoming school year. And then you have the attachments. So if we, within your board packets, this is listed on page 120. So if you go to pages 121 as well as 122, you'll see a brief breakdown of the employee health insurance monthly cost summary That includes this particular year, so 21-22, and then the projections for cost for 22-23. You'll see those including all of our existing plans from the copay plan, the core plan, our high deductible health plans of $1,500, as well as the one listed at $2,500. At the very bottom, you're going to see a new offering or option, which is a new PPO plan, which would offer our particular employees a savings of about, or the district rather, a savings of about 1.8%, but it's an additional offering that nicely fits into the middle of our existing plans because the PPO is at $1,200. If you flip to the final sheet, which is a page 122, within your packets, you'll see our product or provider offerings for all of our ancillary services from dental, vision, voluntary, supplemental, short-term disability, as well as FSA and HSA accounts, and our specific vendors for FMLA and so forth. I will pause. In regards to legal, this is in regard to Osborne School District Policy GCBD, which refers to professional staff's fringe benefits, and then GDBD, which is for support staff's fringe benefits. In regards to the financial implications for the district, this is going to be a 3% increase on employer health insurance costs. And then the recommendation is, it is recommended that the governing board approve the employee fringe benefits for fiscal year 2022 to 2023 as presented.
So if you notice about that 3% increase, one thing that you notice from those board pages is that the cost for employee only doesn't see an increase. So that's a district cost, where employees would feel a cost as if there's any difference on any buy-ups. But in terms of the initial offering for both for that base plan, the HDHP plan, 1,500 or 2,500 plan, there's no increase for, there's no cost for the employee.
But buy-ups, you mean people with kids, is that right?
Well, there's the buy-up first from the base plan to the core plan. So the employee has a cost if they're buying up to that core plan and not selecting the base plan. And then if they're purchasing coverage for either one dependent or children or family.
Is this something? Could you talk a little bit about kind of how it looks and how it works before here, kind of talking to staff and about these changes? Is this something you meet with the Osborne Education Association with, or with teachers, or there's a committee? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So as you know, I just stepped into this positionality as of January 3rd, but if I have the opportunity, which I will after you all approve this, the reimagining of this will be a couple of different varied ways. So after board approval of the potential package, what we would do is we would contact our vendor with Kairos, and our representatives are Courtney as well as Jenna. They're amazing. So we pick a time frame for our open enrollment. And then thereafter, we pick several dates during that time frame for them to either come out to sites or schedule virtual offerings so that they can go through all of the specific options for our staff. So they'll go through and they'll say, if you loved your employee health plan this year, then you can do a passive enrollment, which means that you don't have to make any specific changes. But for employees that were on that specific base plan that's gonna see that slight increase, those particular employees might say, well, I want to see what other offerings there might be. So then we'll go through those particular changes, and anything that the employees would be responsible for paying out of pocket, we'll present that particular information to them as well. It's going to look like videos being available to them both on our website as well as being sent to them. It'll look like in-person HR Day offerings, which was included in our HR report for the month of April. Those will be beginning. So on-site points of contact with our HR team, as well as points of contact with the Kairos team, so they get it directly from them. And then all the links for employees to make their specific benefit elections will be sent to them via email. So it's an active component for them, but we'll be on site for several of those days for them to make their elections and ask any questions, as well as in office for them to come by as well. And this pertains to any employees who have, who work at least 30 hours a week would be making these particular selections.
Got it. And that's all after today. I was hoping to understand.
Yes, this is prerequisite. The board making the determination of what our package is prerequisite to us setting it up with Kairos. So nothing has been determined just yet, but it is typically a 3-week window for all the elections to be made with our employments, or our open enrollment window, if you will.
Got it.
Just to clarify, the amount of copay, deductibles, that sort of thing is still not decided?
Well, they're presented, not in depth, but we do have those particular amounts. If
Okay,
you all
those are
approve of
already-
this, then they would be communicated to staff.
Okay.
They are determined. It
Okay.
just
Yeah.
hasn't been presented to staff yet.
Okay,
So
okay,
for
sorry.
your-
Yeah,
And then there's a whole series of presentations that'll happen to staff.
Okay.
absolutely.
So I guess my question was, prior to today, in this presentation, if there's any input from staff into these recommendations that are coming to us.
No.
Okay. And I'm still learning a lot, but, I think it'd be really good, if staff had input into kind of the decisions are making about their fringe benefits. I don't know how that would look, and so I don't.
Well, part
Yes,
of that,
I was,
part
well,
of that, looking at the budget committee, the work that we do in the spring brings forward lots of ideas. In terms of future benefits that staff may want, and we're able to look at that. But when it comes to negotiating on behalf of the district, that's something that our finance team and our human resources team does. Everyone has their professional roles that they take. We certainly have opportunities to gain input, but when it comes to actively negotiating and working on what our offerings are going to be, that's for the operations side of our district to take care of that. But we certainly do get lots of input all throughout the spring in our whole budget committee process.
absolutely.
I would just add that our selections, like, we're limited as being a member of the Kairos pool. So it's not like we're going out and rebidding our health insurance carriers every year. That's done by Kairos, supporting us as a member of the pool with all of the other members as part of that trust, insurance trust. So they have done the bidding, they've gone out and they've negotiated with the direct carriers for the best rates and structure of the plans, and they've presented those to us. And there's 6 total health insurance plans that are available in the Kairos pool, and we're recommending that we offer 5 of those to our employees. There's one plan that we do not offer to our employees, which is a 3rd high deductible plan, and we have decided through discussions with our district leadership team and in that budget committee process in years past, that it is not, I don't feel like it's fiscally responsible to offer a high deductible plan to our employees just for the sake of a monthly premium savings. It's a $5,000 deductible plan, which creates I think it's a $10,000 to $12,000 family deductible. And so I just don't think that that's fiscally responsible to do and offer that at all to our employees. So from their protection on their end of not picking a high-cost plan. So there is some thought that goes into it, but we are limited to the plans that we can push out based on what Kairos has procured for the pool.
Thank you.
No questions on my end, but I'm interested in some data and information that can be sent via email later on. I'm interested in seeing what people choose. So
We
once
have those values for this year, meaning how many employees chose each of those plans.
Okay.
So that can be obviously disseminated.
And then the sort of the summary of benefits in terms of what's the copay, what are the deductibles, for medical care, pharmacy. Interested in seeing that as well, which can be sent later
Absolutely.
on. Any other questions?
No, I move to approve action item A, recommendation of employee fringe benefit plans for 2022, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item C, approval of construction, easement, and land purchase by the City of Phoenix for Hawk Light Project.
Good evening. So this is timely, as we just discussed safe routes to school and hawk lights at the meeting last month. And so the district attorney has reviewed all of the agreements required to move forward with the temporary construction easement and land purchase by the City of Phoenix to install a hawk light here at Osborne Road and 13th Avenue. It's where our current crosswalk is now. And so the total purchase price, including the temporary construction easement, is $30,000. And so we're recommending that the governing board approve the purchase, which is the sale of land to the City of Phoenix, as well as the temporary construction easement.
Are there any questions?
This is wonderful. It's more hawk lights around the school, the better. I've been meaning to check out the ones over on 15th Ave. I heard one of them was out, but I don't know that for sure. That's not really relevant to this agenda item, other than to say, as we were going through the Safe Routes to School Committee for Encanto and Clarendon, wanting a hawk light somewhere in that area, somewhere between 11th Avenue and 13th Avenue, was definitely high on the list. So this is really exciting. Plus, we get a little bit of money. So it's a win-win, and thank you so much for everybody who helped with it.
Somewhat related to traffic, is this an initiative? Was this initiated by the city, or was this initiated by the district in terms of setting up the hawk light?
So it's nice that it matches what the Safe Routes to Schools Committee's recommendation was. But this comes well before that. This is a city initiative based on their department's looks at traffic. And they've been talking about different plans, like was presented during the last meeting, about mitigation of speed along Osborne Road. And there were much bigger plans that have been scrapped, and so I think this is where the city has landed. But this is a city initiative that was moved forward that we are the beneficiaries of.
Okay.
Wonderful. I move to approve.
I have another question. I couldn't tell from the plan, but one of the concerns raised before was how some of the utility poles blocked sidewalks. And I couldn't tell from the diagrams whether that is where this actual territory or land that we're selling, is this off the sidewalk? Is the unit going to be, do we know if it's going to be on the sidewalk?
John, you want to come up and address that one?
So typically, as they analyze where to place them, they always try to get them out of the walkway or out of the roadway. So that's why they purchase parts of the land, so they can set them back.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's going to be, sounds like it's going to be an ours protruding over, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a great question. We don't need any more things, any more obstructions. I
Right.
just about went over one of those little boxes on my way over here on my bike, so we don't need any more obstructions in the sidewalk. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So now, sorry about that, but I'll entertain a motion now.
I move to approve the temporary construction easement and land purchase by the City of Phoenix for a Hawk Light project on Osborne Road and 13th Avenue.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Don't go anywhere, Colleen. It's still you.
The item D, school district spending report, fiscal year 21.
Yes, and I just noticed, and I apologize before the meeting, that the attachments were not in the packet. There's a link on the board page to the Auditor General's report on their website, but I did want to go ahead and run these off, so if you would like to follow along. In case So one of the first things that you may notice, those of you that are familiar with the annual Auditor General's report on school district spending, or what we in Osborne have referred to for many years as the dollars in the classroom report, is that the format on the state Auditor General's website changed this year. So they've changed the format a little bit. They're moving to more of an interactive website web page than that format where it was the traditional PDF with the really nice charts and graphs and 3 to 5 year comparisons. Every year they change a little bit of what they want to highlight in their comparison data, and this year's no different. And so some of the things there are similar to what we've highlighted in past, but they've also looked at things a little differently this year. And part of what prompted some of that was COVID and not being able or not feeling like there was a really good comparable year to year or district to district in some operational areas as a result of COVID and individual districts' response to the pandemic. I wanted to just highlight for the board and the community the operational spending areas. So the very first chart there for Osborne is still that colorful pie chart that you are all used to, which highlights our percentage of the dollar that goes into classroom spending versus our non-classroom spending, and then broken down between those 7 areas. Our overall classroom spending is just under 70%. I think that's always something that we want to celebrate and highlight for our community and for our kids. Looking at the components that make up classroom spending are not just direct instruction. So where our direct instructional percentage is sitting at 51.8%, it's also, classroom spending includes that, but it also includes student supports as well as instructional supports. And those are those additional supports around the classroom. So when we think about behavior interventionists and reading interventionists, academic interventionists, social workers, therapists, those are all of those supports that go into classroom spending. Then we have our non-classroom spending, which is just over 30%. And that's where we see those operational areas such as administration, plant operations, food service, transportation. Moving to page 2 of the report, wanted to highlight, and this page is interactive, so if you do go to the Auditor General's website, some of these drop downs you can play with where you can change the year comparison. This report is printed showing the 5-year trend of shift between how we've changed in our spending in classroom spending to non-classroom spending over the last 5 years. You can change that if you go to the website to look at year to year, 5-year, 10-year comparisons. But in the last 5 years, we've increased the spending percentage that's going into the classroom in those classroom instructional support areas by 2.5%, which correlates to the decrease in our non-classroom spending by the same 2.5% there. Looking at page 3 of the handout, this is where typically they've had a color-coded table that shows you how you compare to the state average and how you compare to your peer group or peer average based on the peer group that you're a part of. And in the past, they're looking at those non-classroom areas. So how do you compare operationally in administration, plant operations, food service, and transportation? Important to note that this transportation is the one area this year that they did not determine a comparability for districts in their peer group because so many districts during that 2021 school year were some were closed, some were not, others reopened at different times, some were transporting, some were not. And so transportation just didn't seem like a really good comparable apples to apples to be presenting in their report for districts this year. And I should have said at the beginning, this is the 2021 school year. So this is the fiscal year 2021 report. So last school year's data. I wanted to note, in previous years, we have seen where we have been low in comparison and high in comparison in some areas, and you'll see that based on 2021, we are comparable across those areas that they did rate in our peer groups. So whereas we've been a little high on our spending per square foot in past years, we see that now coming more in line to a comparable. Now granted, this is the school closure first full pandemic year of COVID, so not sure what that's gonna look like going into next year when you see the 21-22 school year data before you. We may go back to what we had been before and looking at either a little bit outside of that high or low comparing range. But just thought I would point that out. Moving down to the bottom of the report, the last comparable there looks at our student per teacher ratios over the last 5 years, looks at the average years of teaching experience for Osborne teachers over the last 5 years, and then they give a percentage of teachers in their first 3 years that were employed in Osborne during 2021 school year. Wanted to note, because it was an item that I had highlighted pre-pandemic when we were looking at the 2020 report, was that we had seen the percentage of teachers in their first 3 years with Osborne decline, which felt like that was a really good gauge of how well we were doing with our retainment of staff beyond those first 3 critical years in their teaching profession. We see that number jump back up, and I think that's attributed not just to Osborne, but also we're seeing that statewide due to the increase in attrition in the teaching profession, especially during the pandemic years. So you see that number going back up to 20% for Osborne. We had 29% of our teachers in their first 3 years during 2021. Overall, our average years of teaching experience is dipped a little bit as well. We had been at that 10%, and that dipped down to 9.4. Still a really good number as far as where the state average is at, always sitting really close to that 10-year mark. We'll note you'll notice that in the past there's also been a table about achievement data in the state's school spending report. There's no achievement data comparisons here. Again, that's a result of COVID and the testing and things that was not able to be done at the same level to really pull that in for that 2021 year. I fully expect the state to add that comparable data back in future years to this report. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. This is great and really helpful. I'm looking at the transportation, and the state average is just shy of $3,000, and our district average is $35,000. It's a pretty big difference there. What is that? I mean, we're a pretty compact school district in terms of just square miles. I would expect, I guess I didn't expect that to be such a difference. Why is that?
That's 100% due to COVID. So our schools were closed, so they pull the rider and the mileage from our 100-day route report. We had no transportation happening in those first 100 days of school during the 2021 school year, but we were committed to the continuity and continued employment of all of our transportation staff. So we had the same operational expenditures minus fuel and things like that. We still had all the same salaries and benefit expenditures, and if you remember, we were using those staff in other ways to help with maintenance, to help with delivering meals. And so in other things, but we didn't have the student count in ridership to pull into then that average number.
Okay. That was just a one-year anomaly situation. So is it normally pretty close to the state average? I guess
it is, when you look at these two stand very far apart from each other, usually in a given year for us. So whereas we oftentimes are a little bit higher on one versus the other, and that has to do with the amount of students that we go pretty far for a limited number of kids due to McKinney-Vento routes and other private day school tuition routes and things like that get captured in there. So a lot of times we have a higher cost per mile where you see a lower cost per rider, just because we're transporting a lot of kids over fewer miles, but then we have fewer kids that we're transporting farther distance because of those McKinney-Vento routes.
What kind of routes you said?
McKinney-Vento are homeless students, displaced students. We we're transporting them, usually sharing half of the route with their current school, and then us being the school that they were residing or then coming to. And so those are pretty far routes that we're transporting, and the cost that goes into that for maybe 1 or 2 kids for those routes.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Colleen.
Next item, COVID update. And before we do that, I'll call Brody Ver to address the board. Again, you're the only speaker on this topic. If you think it's going to be more than 5 minutes, let me know. Otherwise,
6 minutes. 6 minutes.
6 minutes, okay. I'll allow it.
Okay. Hi. Esteemed board members, Dr. Robert, and members of our community. My name is Rhody Veer. This is my 18th year teaching in the Osborne School District. Currently, I guide the K-3 cluster of teachers and students at Longview. The bulk of my 18 years have been spent teaching first grade, a pivotal grade in learning to read. If you know me, then you know I am passionate about getting our Osborne kids to read. I'm here today to speak to you about the current mask mandate we have for staff and students. I'd like you to reconsider and let it be a choice for both staff and families. I absolutely appreciate the abundance of caution toward our family's health that we have operated with attention to for the last 2 years. I believe we now need to apply that same abundance of caution to the reading health of our students. Many people rightfully believe the statistics on COVID-19 are scary, or they were scary. The statistics have changed for the better. All of our students, K-8, are of an age that their families can choose for them to be vaccinated. Additionally, hospitalization rates for children aged 5 through 17 have historically been the lowest per 100,000 for all age groups. On the other hand, I'd like you to consider the scary effect that masking has had on the already difficult task of learning to read. For the last year, we have been expecting our children whose brains learn to read by connecting letters to known speech sounds to know what sounds teachers make behind their masks, and for teachers to know what sounds students make behind their masks, and then to connect those sounds or phonemes to letters or letter clusters, graphemes. This is after a year of online learning where the reading gap grew. And for our learners whose first language they heard is Spanish, they have to train their brains to hear the 15+ vowel sounds in English instead of the 5 that their brains heard growing up. I said connect letters to speech sounds because that's the way our brains learn to read. Our brains learn to read speech to print, not print to speech. Our children first have to have the sounds in their heads, and masks create a problem there. Mouth shape is critical to correct sound production. They need to see our mouths, and we need to see their mouths. To illustrate the importance of correct mouth shape and airflow, I'd like you to consider this question. How did Helen Keller, deaf and blind, learn to speak? Well, the answer is she learned by touching Annie Sullivan's mouth, nose, and throat to feel the vibration. In doing those things, she learned how sounds are formed by the specific formation of our mouths when creating phonemes. She was able to turn those sounds into learning to speak. Right now, we are depriving our students of the ability to see what our mouths look like when we make sounds, and they sure aren't touching our faces either. This is vital to the development of reading skills. In particular, it is vital for those who are going to struggle with learning to read. Learning to read is not a natural function of our brains, like learning to speak or learning to move our bodies. Learning to read takes hard work, and we're making it harder. I appreciate the fact that we have erred on the side of caution up to this point with regard to people's health. But I believe we have reached the point where we now need to start operating with an abundance of caution for our students' futures as readers and what a future as a reader or a non-reader means. We worry about the health effects of COVID and that they might get sick because we're afraid of the statistics. Well, I will tell you what statistics I am afraid of. I am afraid of the statistics of children who do not learn to read. In particular, children who do not learn to read by the end of first grade, or even worse, by the end of fourth grade. Do you know what kind of future they face? Particularly African American, Hispanic, and poor children. Check the NAEP reading report for that specific data for Arizona. It is not pretty. Their future is bleak. Their future is geared more toward a life of crime, a life of not succeeding, a life where you can't even sign a lease agreement because you don't know what it says, or you just sign it, not wanting to reveal that you don't know what you just signed. You can read the numbers, but you have no idea what the rules for those contracts are. They are destined to have a dead-end job because, hey, you can't read to advance yourself. So what do a lot of those students do? Well, if you are male, you turn to crime by and large and end up in jail. Research shows that children who struggle to read in first grade are 88% more likely to struggle in grade 4. And those who struggle in fourth grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of school. Data reveals that 85% of juveniles who interact with the court system are functionally illiterate. And 60% of the nation's inmates are illiterate. Paul Romero, a corrections official, once noted, with legal means of succeeding in society narrowed, illiteracy is heavily implicated in the crimes landing many behind bars in the first place. If you are female, you turn to raising a family before you are married, before you are out of your teens. In a Medical News Today journal article on October 31st, 2012, the following was stated. Supporting previous research, it has been confirmed that independent of other influences, low literacy rates in preteen girls significantly predict childbearing among teenagers in the U.S. Findings of their analysis showed that girls with less than average reading levels were 2.5 times more likely to give birth in their earlier teens compared with those that had average reading levels. 21% of girls with below reading levels had 1 live birth during those 6-year examination period, and 3% of those girls had 2 or more live births in that period. On the other hand, only 12% of girls with average reading skills had 1 live birth, and 1% had 2 or more live births. Of the children with above average reading skills, 5% had 1 live birth, and 0.4% had 2 or more live births. This study also measured racial inconsistencies in literacy as a factor to teenage pregnancy. A higher percentage of African American and Hispanic girls had below average reading skills. Everyone has the right to read. Everyone has the right to the life that learning to read entitles them. I ask you now to please reconsider our current mask mandate and allow it to be a choice made by parents and staff. Let us further our value of equity through literacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fair. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Robert.
All right, so forever I've been giving you guys COVID updates, and so continuing that practice, we left it as a standing item. So I wanted to present some data. If you can first go to the Google Doc, I'm going to start with the CDC. There we go. Jeff, if you'll just keep scrolling down a little bit more until you get to the map of the United, or let's stop right there. Right there in the middle, it shows you the recommendations, the prevention steps that you should take based on your COVID-19 community level. So the green is to stay up to date with your vaccines, get tested. Medium, I don't need to read everything there, but it lets you know what the different steps that you should take based on your community's level. Where masking is, that recommendation when you get into that medium risk, particularly if you're at high risk for severe illness, and even more so when you're at that community high level. So go on ahead and keep scrolling down, Jeff, till you get to the map of the United States. And this is the current levels. This is on the CDC website. So just click anywhere on the state of Arizona, and it'll pop up larger. You don't have to be in our county. It'll pop up larger, and you can see out of 15 counties, 13 Arizona counties are currently in the green, the low level of COVID-19 community level. This is how they're referring to it on that CDC website, as your COVID-19 community level. Jeff, can you go on ahead and pull up the Maricopa County data now? And as we hop onto this county website, it is, I'm going to do it from right in front of me. It goes over the same thing, and it shows right there in the middle that the Maricopa County community level is low. If you keep scrolling a little bit more, you get to this summary dashboard. And yeah, just stop right there, Jeff. When we first got into COVID 2 years ago, we learned a lot of new language. We didn't know how to talk about this stuff. Epidemiologists talked about this. We had no clue what we were talking about, but we've become really, really conversant about COVID, about disease. But again, we take our lead from the medical experts. One of the things that we learned about from the very beginning was this idea of flattening the curve. And so we had done a very good job with flattening that curve as vaccines were becoming prevalent and we were expanding who had access to vaccines. And then you get this big spike that's happening there. That spike's what we know as Omicron, right? So we saw this huge spike start to happen. But as that happened, and access to vaccines increased, the CDC started looking at ways that we were talking about infection, and not just talking about it in the ways that we always knew, which was there were a couple measures that we talked about here, with the school board. We talked about the number of cases per 100,000. We talked about the percent positivity. That was the language that we used for a long time. And so infections were happening. Lots of people were getting sick with COVID. But then a noticeable change happened in that COVID, and that's that hospitalizations may have happened, deaths may have happened, previous, but as we came into this variant, and with people having, number one, vaccines, and number two, their booster shots for those vaccines, we saw the effect on severe illness, where the infection led to great severity, this decrease that was happening. So Jeff, go on ahead and just click along the bottom. You see the first thing there is just all cases, but go ahead and click on the hospitalizations. And it'll just load here for a second, but we're gonna see the same type of flattening of the curve that's happening. And the same thing if you click on deaths. Thinking. And again, we see that going down to very small numbers. If you get a chance to work with this at home and go onto it, you can see that there's the actual data, but then there's the general curve, and you can see that black line that's going along that general curve. If you actually put your cursor on the black line, it's in 1 week spans. And so it'll give you what the actual data was for that 1 week. If you hover over it, it tells you the number of deaths or the number of hospitalizations or the number of cases week by week by week. So we've done, I'm very proud of the job, and Rhodey mentioned it in her letter, you know, in terms of the pride that we've taken as a district in being very responsive to the health of our students. And you know, this idea of listen to the science, you know, we have been doing that. One of the things that last time we were here in February, we saw numbers that were starting to go down. That community level was that medium area, was that yellow. And most of Arizona was there, if not on the, you know, some areas were in the orange. We weren't pushed down into that green area. But now we see 13 out of 15 counties that are there. And so part of, you know, our credibility as a district, you know, we've said we're going to follow the science. And so I think that we need to continue to do that and look at what the recommendations are and why the recommendations are there. Part of the reason that we don't look at just percent positivity and cases per 100,000 is because of we're not just counting numbers of infections that happen, but rather looking at the impact, the public health impact on the community. And so that's why there was a shift in the old data that used to be on here. And if you scroll down a little bit more, Jeff, you can see, keep scrolling down on the page a little bit more. You can see the old chart that we used to use. Yeah, and just go on to View Report. If you click in that blue box, oops, I need a refresh. Click right there where it says zip code. Go on to elementary school district. And then if you just kind of zoom in on the screen, you can see those districts. Yeah, pull it over a little bit. And Osborne is one of those orange areas. And you can see some of the districts around us: Wilson, Roosevelt, Riverside, Levine. Those are some Phoenix Union districts that are in that red area. If you click on any one of those, you can get the old data that we used to talk about all the time. Go on ahead, Jeff, and just click in the, yeah, you clicked in the Osborne one. That shows you the cases per 100,000, and it shows you the percent positivity. So we're at just under 10%, about 8.9% positivity within the areas here within Osborne School District. And we see that there are 50-some cases per 100,000. That's giving you the level of transmission of COVID. The others, you may wonder, I went on this one and it shows red and orange and yellow, and I go on another and it's showing all this green. This old data, which they're still putting on there, talks about transmission of COVID, whereas the other chart through the CDC talks about the community, the public health impact of disease, and it's decreased so much because of prevalence of vaccines and boosted individuals, people who have been infected with COVID, and the ability of our bodies to build up antibodies and resistance against other variants or subvariants of COVID. So where all this is getting to me is looking at our mitigation strategies here within the district and where we need to be. I continue my weekly meetings with area superintendents, mainly the superintendents in the Phoenix Union foothold. Just talked yesterday, and my recommendation is going to be that we need to look at giving the choice for masking for teachers and for students within our community, following the science. As we said that we were going to do, looking at this data. I wanted to wait until after spring break. I wanted to see what the numbers looked like here. Our days were filled with contact tracing for months and months and months. And we're not spending all of our time as an administrative team doing all of this contact tracing. We're seeing numbers go down in the same way that we're seeing, this data through the CDC. We're seeing the same within our schools too. So Jeff, can you go back now to just the Google sheet? Yeah. Oh, I had put some updated. Is that can you refresh that? Well, that's okay. You guys don't need to see it. I can just tell you the things that I put it as notes for myself, but I can tell you guys. So my recommendation is that we look at moving towards going mask optional. And one of the questions that's out there is, what about this BA2 subvariant that's being talked about? You know, there's this new variant that's coming out. Whenever there's a new variant, you've got a few questions to ask yourself. Is it more contagious? Does it cause more severe disease? And does it evade the protection of our vaccines? So on those three questions, the first one, is it more contagious? The answer is yes. It is more contagious. That's what we're seeing. This data is, we're a few weeks behind where Europe is, but we're almost at the point now where about a third of the COVID infections in the United States are actually of this new variant. Yet we see the flattening of those curves, yet still occurring at the same time. So it's growing actually faster than the original subvariant of Omicron in the US. And it should be very soon the dominant variant present here within the United States. But does it cause more severe disease? And what they're seeing in Europe, as well as the prevalence here within the United States, is no, it doesn't appear to be causing more severe disease than Omicron, and hospitalizations should be comparable to those levels that are showing that community impact is very seriously decreased. And to that last question of, does it evade the protection of our vaccines? There are two components to that question in and of itself. Number one, the effectiveness is restored. If there is any decrease, that's restored with getting a booster shot. And second, that it offers very good effectiveness against severe illness of either Omicron subvariants, as well as prior infection, as well as the fact that if you've been prior infected with Omicron, that it provides an even stronger protection against reinfection with this new subvariant. All that leads me to that same conclusion that I kind of started with, that I'm led to make a recommendation that we follow CDC guidance and wear a mask if we're in areas of high COVID-19 community levels, and that's not where we are right now. So I'm looking forward with a hope of continuing to monitor this. We've got another 3-day weekend coming up soon with the Cesar Chavez Observance Day at the very end of the month. Actually, we don't take the 31st, we'll take that Friday, April 1st off, with a hope of being able to return in April, when we come back to school on Monday, April 4th, with a masking option for staff and students within schools. So I'm bringing that forward to you as just my discussions with colleagues that are in the same position that I am, and consideration that we're giving to this. Want to open it to the board for your comments, your thoughts about this. But again, I just guess just to conclude my opening statements here is we have been blessed in Osborne with an extremely supportive community. There has been very little to almost no pushback to the fact that we have gone out of our way to protect the health of our staff and our students. And I want to maintain that same level of confidence that folks have in us by not choosing now to put different letters after my name instead of EDD and claim to be an epidemiologist. I want, I've been relying on public health officials for 2 years, and I've been granted grace by this community, and I'm ready to continue listening to those public health officials and help steer us into this next phase.
Thank you, Dr. Robert. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Yeah, thank you for the information. That was very helpful. And it's been a roller coaster. You're looking at just if you look at the charts, you can just see the roller coaster. And I won't pick on anybody, but a lot of districts when the coaster was down before, let's say it was, if you looked at last summer, for example, when the numbers were going down, people were saying, "Look, we're not going to do masks," and then things went back up, and people had to change. Some other districts had to turn around and shift. So I'm not going to. No one here's got a crystal ball. We don't know whether things are going to go up. That's just inherently a concern based on the roller coaster we've been on, that this lull would change. So I guess in that respect, since the thought might be going with an April 4th, my request would be, give it another week since to kind of before any sort of announcement would go out, just to make sure we're continuing to trend downwards. The last thing I would want to do, especially this later in the school year, would say mask optional, then something happens and things are going back up, and us to have to say, get your mask mandated again. That's something I'd like to avoid. And another thing that we'd all like to avoid is any sort of major disruption in the school year. Hopefully none of that happens. My question is, a lot of this is based on vaccines, and I wish our vaccine, I think we all do wish our vaccine, numbers were higher in terms of percentage of our kids being vaccinated. It's not where I think any of us want it to be. But what about for the 3 and 4-year-olds in our schools? We just talked a bunch about our 3 and 4-year-olds. The vaccine are just not eligible. Unfortunately, those kids can't get vaccinated. And so that kind of thought process with the vaccines being a game changer for our kids who are eligible for them, what does that look like? What would that look like for a 4-year-old room, for example, where the kids aren't vaccinated?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. A few thoughts on that. Number one, by presenting options does not make requirements that individuals would not have to mask. It would leave that option there available to both staff and students. And I actually think that if we were to go to an option, that we would still have individuals that would choose to continue masking from the staff perspective as well as from the student perspective. Don't know that until we go there. That's number one. But number two, we also, I've just got to look at what we've been encountering in our schools. Just a few weeks ago, we were in a panic about not having enough, our ability to do pool testing, because we had 40, 50, 60 pools coming back positive, and now we have pools coming back with everybody in the clear. With some instances of a need to do further that secondary testing, and even those secondary tests not coming back with positive results. We will not know until we take steps that are different. But we've done an amazing job thus far.
I'd like
but
to
it just doesn't feel like it's necessary
agree
anymore.
with Ed, and I would like to continue to be cautious. What I'm reading on BA2 is that we don't really know what the symptoms are yet, and if there's research states that the vaccine could protect us, but there's not enough research. So I would continue to be safe. I know that it's spreading, and New York is one of the places where it's spreading, and we're about to go on break, and I do feel like we should continue to be cautious because none of us sitting here are MDs and experts on this, so I don't feel comfortable making a decision that can harm people in the long run. So I'd rather continue to be cautious, over cautious than regret not being so.
What I've heard lately on the news is that the free shots are I think today was the last day of the free shots. Now people have to pay for them.
No. I do think that part of what was in the news today is that the federal government is looking at a hope for an influx of more cash towards continuing all of the testing and vaccination efforts at the same level to be able to provide it for free. However, cash hasn't run out, and so both testing and shots are still readily available for free.
Thank you for the information, Dr. Robert. I echo your sentiments of we have been not delegating the decision to state and federal health officials, but we have been taking into account their input and judgment because we are not competent medical professionals. And even if we were, we're not doing research on this. We don't have all the data. Your job is to run a school, not to, do research on COVID. So I am cautious of, at this point, not going with the health officials' recommendation. The recommendation is, right now it's green. We can make masking optional, but we understand that this is a fluid situation. It could be that in 3-4 weeks, we are in red and we have to require masks again. That's not a failure in the policy or in the decision-making process. It's recognizing that we are living in a time when there's going to be volatility and we have to respond to that. So I support and echo your comments regarding the policy. I leave it up to your discretion, as we have throughout this process, in terms of, because we have been managing this through regulation, not board action. So I leave it up to your discretion, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of selecting a date for making those decisions.
I've got to say too that the decision to move towards a masking optional policy, I wouldn't make that decision or recommendation if I felt that we were making a risky calculation and doing something that was unsafe. As a parent, I don't want to. I shouldn't make I'll do it anyway. Sometimes we just have to think about, terms that we being anecdotal or telling a story with it. I can remember the fear with my oldest in teaching him to ride a bike and holding that bike and running as fast as I could and letting go of it. But when I let go, I kept running behind it. And then I would grab it again and let go again. And there comes a certain point where you run, you let go, and you trust because you've seen enough to know. I'm not doing this because I'm just taking a guess. I've come to this point from seeing where we've gone, I don't know where we're headed, but even as much infection as is happening right now, what's not happening is historic levels of negative that's the job of an epidemiologist. They were driven into hyperdrive because we were in an international pandemic and the highest levels of direction. Like we went very strong, as we needed to during critical times to restrictions. But that's not the normal job of an epidemiologist. The normal job of an epidemiologist is to look at the data and make recommendations for the general public health, not to tell people what to do with their lives every step of the way. And so we're at this point where we're moving from pandemic to endemic, where public health is now at the point of not looking at every single case and panicking over every single case, but looking at what is happening within our community. What is the public health implication of this disease, and where can we make recommendations? That's where we've gotten to where we're seeing that low community impact. So I understand, and I am very much appreciative to this board of the trust that you've given me during this time, and super, super nervous with it now that it's at this point of having to make a decision about. There was safety in being super safe, as a decision maker. And it makes me nervous to make a different decision, right? But I'm at the point of feeling comfortable about it. I want you to know that. I feel comfortable with the direction that I and my colleagues have discussed and see the appropriateness in time and place for leading our districts.
I would like to add another. I'm thankful for your direction on this so far, what you have done. And I have to echo both your sentiments and some of my colleagues' sentiments as well, because what worries me about this specific virus is the fact that it's mutated so fast. It's been 2 years and we've had three big mutations as compared to other pandemics we've had in the past, where it hasn't been, or at least technology may not have been around, but still. What I'm reading about the BA2 variant, what I'm reading from GISAID, is that the severity is just the same as regular Omicron. A little bit more contagious, same severity. But again, my worry is if it mutates again. So while I do believe that we may be at a time where we can start removing some of these mitigation strategies, I don't believe it's behind us far enough to just do it. I do think that we still should be cautious on it. I echo that sentiment, but I do believe, I'm still in the classroom on a daily basis. I no longer worry about having to wear this. I look at my numbers and I'm conscious of how many students are out. And this March, I've had none. February, 2. January, many. I've seen the numbers go down. So I think we're at a place in time where we can slowly remove that. That's just coming from my anecdotal experience in the high school classroom. So, but either way, I thank you for what you've done so far, and I trust you in the decision you would make from here. I just would worry that if we remove mitigation strategies and we start trying to put it behind us per se, we may lag behind it if it does come back.
How many students in your class?
My biggest class is 26. My smallest is 11. Sorry, 9 now.
Yeah, I take. I've always thought about this as, and I'm glad you brought up the social harm aspect of it, because in my mind it's always been sort of a balancing test of social harm, and what I understand from experts in the education field is that there is a harm in learning, not just because of Ms. Ver's comments today, but just in general, that there is a harm in the learning experience by wearing masks. But it made sense to me that the health harms outweighed. But I agree that it's a balancing test. But I agree that we may have to shift back, and I think that is, for better or worse, my position on this is that we just need to. My preference is to try to remain agile and flexible with this, because this virus it's like any virus. It is driven to evolve and mutate. But we trusted and we followed the guidance of our health experts, and I worry about the appearance of deviating from that because of a personal belief or an understanding. To me, I think we should be consistent with our past practice and our past or past decision making.
And if I could add to that harmful part, like I think about this every day as an English learner and someone who's a little bit deaf, and I relied on reading people's lips most of the time because I have a difficult time hearing. But I read and listen to the radio every day, and the research doesn't confirm that this is harmful. For children, it actually says the opposite. It says that your brain adapts to this, and this is someone from Johns Hopkins University, and that your brain, actually it's done the contrary, where children are talking more in the classroom because they now have masks. So now they communicate more, and that's the research that I've seen and I've read because I thought about it every single day, like, is this affecting children? And I look at my own children and see, like, are they suffering? Like, are their grades being affected? And if they are, they haven't, and if there is something that has affected them, it has nothing to do with the mask. It's more of like the beginning being trapped, and not being able to leave and not being able to play sports. But all the research behind, the whole masking in children isn't stating that it's affected it. And this is from like brain development experts. It doesn't affect their language or anything. And I've always thought about like, how is someone like an English learner, like who's already trying to learn 2 languages and has to like read lips and pay attention to like expressions, like how are they being affected? But it says that the research doesn't back it up that children are being harmed by the mask wearing.
Perhaps. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field either. But at the end of the day, again, I have made my decisions based on what our health professionals and leaders have suggested and recommended, and I'm comfortable continuing to follow their lead. Are there any more comments or thoughts?
So my intentions in terms of timeline, Ed, you were asking, if we could give it another week. I am looking at that data. I look at it every Wednesday when it comes out, and the look at it last Wednesday is what's pushing me more in this direction, and I'll continue to do so. But I also feel very comfortable in being a couple weeks past spring break. Once we get to this week and next week. To start feeling comfortable about making that move. And I also want to be able to make an announcement with good time, not just, make an announcement on a Friday and then Monday we're coming back and having things changed. Because I want to have time to put out the message in multiple different ways, different languages, make sure that we're very clear in our presentation. So I'm hoping to, word's going to get out just from, number one, this being online, but through conversation. But in terms of a formal announcement, holding off until next week. But I would like to make an announcement next week if the numbers continue to look the same.
I'm concerned about the winter, it's not a winter break, it's a spring break. What the families are going to be doing, because I'm assuming they're going to not have masks when they're playing or whatever they do. And
we had it. We're back. We're back from it. So that's what we waited for spring break to end. We're now in our 2nd week back from spring break. Next week, when I would be looking to make an announcement, we'd have 3 full weeks of data post spring break.
So just to be clear, the thought would be you would wait until next week's Wednesday, look at that data. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'm going to look at this week's data and start taking all the steps to making an announcement early next week.
And just to be clear, this is an announcement for staff and students.
Correct.
Just being clear because
Yeah, thank you.
at my school, or my district in Scottsdale, it was said, staff members have to wear it, but students don't. And I was like, that doesn't make that much sense, but okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be a universal choice.
Just double checking.
Don't mean to micromanage you or anybody else, but my 2 cents is, doesn't hurt to wait until next week's data. You don't need a ton of notice if somebody's going to say, take off a mask, you know. I don't think there needs to be a ton of notice. I think a Friday to Monday would be just fine. But, you know, just give us another week of data just to make sure that it's where we want and think it's going to be. So just my
I'll
2
hold
cents on
I'll
that.
hold off as long as I can, but it's not just a matter of the communication. The communication plan requires writing a script of what I'm going to say, filming it, getting that uploaded, getting it put onto the website, getting it put onto social media, getting it out. So, you know, more than, you know, it's more than just here's the data and here's the announcement. You know, it just actualizing it takes a bit of time, but I can get it done.
If you were to look at the data next Wednesday and the recommendation is, and perhaps numbers are stable or go up a little bit, but the recommendation from the CDC is green still,
Yeah, that's
you know, what, you know, it seems like, I think that the number, I think, you know, we perhaps have belabored the point. You know, are there any other comments or questions? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, the next item, 9, board development. We are going to be discussing video regarding conscious discipline, specifically on noticing.
we're a long way into this meeting, you know, so I want to just be conscious of you all. But this is really important stuff that you guys have asked for. So I asked you to do a little bit of homework ahead of time. There was a video for board members to watch from Dr. Becky Bailey about it's just a small piece of this big thing that we've been doing called conscious discipline. And the topic for this week was noticing. With that video, there were some things that I pointed out as some key thoughts that I wanted you to think about before watching the video. Just that difference between noticing and judging, and why we go through this activity of noticing for children. Noticing and doing it out loud. It's about bringing consciousness to students and to adults. Becky Bailey referred to noticing specifically as mindfulness in action. We think of mindfulness so much as being this internal process, but noticing is that bringing action to it, that mindfulness in action. So I gave you a few questions. We don't have to, you know, there are 4 questions there for us to discuss. But, you know, I thought maybe we could have a chance for you to chime in on a couple of these. One of the big things that I hope you guys looked at and paid attention to in the video, there was this one point where Becky demonstrated noticing. She spent about 5 minutes of the video with you listening, watching her, making these statements of noticing. And did you notice? In the very first thing that she did with the students, she was commenting their teacher. She was an observer in the classroom. And their teacher had called them all to the carpet. And as they came to the carpet, a little circle area made a circle around. She started making some statements. I noticed when you came, your teacher asked you to come to the carpet, and when you came and you had your hands like this. The first thing a bunch of kids did was they did their hands like this because they thought she was making a judgment, and they were trying to please her. But she just kept on noticing things. And the more she noticed the children being who they were, the more inclined they were to be themselves and not try and act like something. She wasn't coercing behavior. She was just noticing where students were, and the more she was able to notice, the more they were able to just be themselves as children. Did you guys pick up on that, notice that? And I guess there are 4 questions there. I'll let you guys choose which ones you want to discuss.
Well, number 2 speaks out to me because I am still a parent. They're still young-ish, and it made me think about how I interact with my kids, and the difference between telling them, "Oh, you did good there," you know, when they did something good, which I'm proud of or whatever, versus really recognizing oh, you built that by yourself, and you took this element of this and put it in here and did that and the other, which I think conveys a similar pride, but it is noticing exactly what they did, and it takes it away from me. Instead of serving me and my need, praise, or whatever, it goes to validate my child by talking about what they did and how they did it. So that's what came to mind when thinking about noticing.
That second question also kind of called out to me too, as now a parent. And the video was really nice, and it kind of has the same theme of taking it from the kind of reactionary, what we talked about the last time, into the more thoughtful mindfulness. And to me, it's kind of slowing things down. And I try to do that. I don't do that great of a job at it because there's always kind of the urgency of the now. I feel like going from one thing to the next to the next to the next. So I feel like I need to be reminded often, especially as a parent, to be more noticing and mindful. So I really enjoyed the video. It wasn't that long. I watched it on the train ride into work yesterday, and just really appreciate the kind of ongoing development that we're getting through this series.
It's a skill. It's a skill to pick up as a parent, a skill to pick up as a teacher, and you've got to practice it. And so, one of the things that we learned in conscious discipline was kind of like a frame for doing so, and then just practicing that frame. Ed, you were farther away from the microphone, and you got closer, and everybody could hear you so much better. That was helpful.
Thank you.
That's the frame. Just calling to the person. You're not speaking, hey, class. No, I'm talking to you, Ed. Ed, I noticed something. That was helpful. It's not about coercing other people to do that. It's just affirming something that was seen and bringing your, what may have been involuntary action, to your consciousness. Does anybody want to practice?
And before we do that, I mean, there's a difference in how you can say, like, oh, can you please remember to speak into the mic? Like, that could have been the statement, but that may not have been as helpful as pointing out, hey, Ed, you did good. You're still communicating the same concept, but you're doing it, I think, in a much more positive way.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I noticed that the comment that you made was very insightful.
I guess I could add to that one. So my takeaway as a parent and as a volunteer and someone who has sat in the classrooms is I've noticed how the teachers do use this and how they usually, words make a difference, and the tone of voice and the body language makes a difference. And I've been very lucky to see and learn from the teachers how to be a better parent because of the way that our teachers talk to our students. So one thing that I can remember, and that is part of this conversation, is teachers always saying things like, thank you for being so thoughtful, thank you for being so, mindful, those kind of things at the end are very different. I didn't parent that way, and I try to catch myself, and I try to use those tactics that I've learned from teachers in the classroom as a parent. Sometimes I forget, and I'm just a disciplinarian, but I do feel like volunteering has helped me be a better parent because what I've learned, and teachers are always saying really nice things like, you're so helpful, or you're so kind, and thank you for helping your friend. So those are the things that I observed, is that words make a difference in children's lives and how we deliver them and how our body language. Because if you're an English learner or you don't speak the language, you're just seeing someone's body and you're trying to understand if that person is upset or happy.
I want to chime in as a teacher and say it really does work, but it's also when you build a habit of not, practicing this, it's hard. And even to this day, it's a hard habit, or it's still sometimes hard to work in a classroom, but it does really make a difference with students. So.
You have the opportunity as board members, to interact within the community. You know, you've got, a lot of you have kids at home and you can use this as a practice, but you're engaging in this professional learning now for you as a board member. So just looking at that fourth question, what actions do you think you can take as a board member, whether in a meeting or in interactions with the community, to support the work that our staff is doing in elevating their professional skills? How does this impact you as a board member?
Well, we can notice each other and our staff and talk in a way that is positive and mindful of their work and, you know, amongst each other and amongst the staff, and just be more, I don't want to use the word notice, but just notice and be present, because this is what this work is about, and use the kind words to shift the energy into positive energy.
It's an interesting question because in a sense, like we work together here in these meetings, and I feel like it is a very collegial group, but I'm trying to think, like, we don't necessarily thank each other for each other's comments or recognize each other when we speak or say something that we find valuable. And I wonder if that's something that perhaps we would benefit from.
I'm even thinking too, just in interactions with community members about the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's something that you do as a board member too, is you interact with the community and they ask you, you know, some things that they may want to know. What are test scores like? Like, are we always going to have conversations about schools in that way? You know, we can engage community members in discussion about, you know, what amazing thing is happening in Osborne right now? And talk through some of this, you know?
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I mean, it is something that does come up in terms of something that distinguishes Osborne in my mind. The approach to sort of the beyond testing. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with both comments. I think, you know, as also as your, I suppose, supervisor as a board, you know, we can do a better job of do more noticing of all the wonderful things you're doing, you know. And I think this is a great skill to have, because I think you do that with the staff that you work with and oversee, and I think it's a great skill to use. In that point about noticing the wonderful things that we're doing as a school, you know, and one of those kind of beyond test scores, right, moments that I had, and I think a lot of other parents had. I went to my daughter went to her first, you know, like birthday party since the pandemic this past weekend, and there was, you know, at least a dozen little Encanto kindergartners that were there. And the things that they were doing, I know they didn't learn it from me or at home, I think, just how well they were interacting with each other and how patient they were with each other. And when it was time to hit the piñata, they all grabbed a chair and lined up. And, you know, it was just their interactions and mannerisms was like, wow, this is an amazing thing that our schools in this district have done in such a short period of time with these little tiny 5-year-olds that I knew they were only getting that level of kindness and compassion just so reinforced so well through our schools. And that's something that makes us really unique. And I think we could do a better job of noticing those things to our community members.
I think we also, because this is something I kind of heard said here today, and you've said this, Dr. Rivera. You said noticing all the great things happening in Osborne. I think we can do that if we step outside just thinking about what's happening in our classrooms and notice what our community members are doing, even those who may not have children in the district, because they're still vital to our community. I think if we, as a board, when we're out and about and we notice things, or, you know, people talk to us about it, so we can help them and also notice things going on around them, but also thank them for the things that they're doing. Because I think one thing that Osborne has going for it that I've seen it do far better than other districts is we don't think about Osborne just as a school district, we focus on the community aspect. So if we continue noticing what's going on, not just in the halls of our schools or on the ground, but in our community, I think that's gonna help us as well.
Well, thank you. I'll continue to keep bringing more of this learning to you. I appreciate the conversation, and again, just all the way you guys are embracing this it really, I think, makes our staff feel validated in the work that because they're working hard at this. So thank you for the time and effort that you've given this.
Thank you. Next, item number 10, reflections, feedback on the meeting. We'll start down the row and move up. Luis?
I'm gonna echo what I just said again in that Osborne, one thing I've just noticed we do so much better than some places I've been in is we focus a lot on our community. When we're not just talking about our students, we're talking about everyone involved. Our focus is our students. We still worry about our community at large, and I really do appreciate that. And I think that's evident here, whether it's talking about what we're doing with COVID or the hawk lights or what's going on in our halls. We really do care about our community as a whole.
I loved hearing about our preschools, and then all the partnerships that are happening. And just to add to what we were just talking about and what Ed just mentioned, I can't take credit for my kids. Like, I always get complimented on how well they're behaved and how kind and compassionate and good they are from like soccer coaches and other parents, and I can't take credit for that. I have to say that I've seen that modeled in the classroom, and that is why they are, and my kids are old now. One's going to college, one's going to high school. So I really think that it has a lot to do with the education they've received here in the Osborne School District and what they've seen modeled by their teachers. Because I'd like to say that I model that behavior, but I don't, so.
Well, I'm torn between two situations here. I totally understand that teachers are having a hard time teaching the children how to read because of the masks and them not being able to see what the teacher's mask is, or mouth is doing. But I also am concerned about, I think that, I hate these masks. I think that saying like tomorrow we don't have to wear masks anymore, that just worries me. It just worries me. I just am concerned about if the new crap that's just coming back or coming out, if that's going to make everything worse. Are we going to go down the hill into where we can't get back out? It's a hard decision to decide something like this, whether the masks should be eliminated, or even if they're given the option, the parents are given the option, send them with a mask or don't. It's just a hard situation. The whole last 2 years have been very hard. I just can't imagine what it's like to be teaching a classroom like that and having parents with different ideas and thoughts and negative things, and I don't know. I think I'm more concerned about saying, okay, we're not going to do masks anymore than I mean, the teachers have gone through almost a whole year of not being able to teach the kids how to read. That's a terrible thing. It's really horrible. But giving away or eliminating the mask too soon might be worse than not being able to read. They can't even be able to breathe or live. I don't know. It's a hard decision.
My reflections, really nice meeting. Really, a lot of, I would say 3 of my top favorite things we got to talk about today. Preschools and preschool programs, really exciting presentation. Shade and trees and heat mitigation, love talking about that. And hawk lights and pedestrian safety. Those are like right up my alley. I love talking about all of those things. And want more of all of it. These are all good things that I love. I love focusing on, and I want to. I'd love to see this district do more of all of those things: pedestrian safety, more trees, more shade, and more preschool programs. I know you can't do everything all at once, but I just would love to continue moving into all of those directions. So, wonderful meeting. I really enjoyed it.
I am constantly amazed by this group's ethos when it comes to just working together, and we don't necessarily agree on everything, but we respect each other's commitment to doing the right thing and the serving our community. I definitely see my colleagues as being here to serve the community and are invested in that. So yeah, just continuously pleased by the group's values and ethos. Michael?
I won't repeat anything that's said, so I'll mention something different. I'm very appreciative to the board. You guys are always very supportive. You ask the right questions, good questions, hard questions, and really get behind this administration when we bring something forward. So I want to thank you for supporting and approving the fringe benefits package that we're able to offer to staff. It's a big deal because I know that a lot of districts struggled in terms of the rate increases that they're facing this year, and this is it's a modest increase that we're going to see, but I'm glad to not be facing worse in light of everything. And again, thank you for your support on that.
Future agenda items, Luis?
One of them, and I apologize, Dr. Willem, for my phone going off earlier. I was trying to look up something about this, and I hit the wrong button. But Ed also brought this up. He brought up employee input on the fringe benefits package. And I'm looking through our policy right now, Policy Bridge, and I noticed we do have meet and confer, and I'm wondering where we stand with meet and confer, especially with OEA, because I mean, that's what's helped push for changes I've seen in the past. So I know, I'm looking at the policy, it does say that one member from OEA is on each committee, or similar, or something along that wording, but I wouldn't mind seeing more meet and confer going on with us and OEA.
Ms. Aguilar?
Yes, oh, okay. Since we are working on our conscious discipline, I was hoping to have it obviously isn't going to bind anyone, but have a social contract that the board members sign, that obviously we would work on this together, that we are going to be thoughtful and won't say things that are hurtful to our children, about our children, our students, not our children, our students, or about each other, something in that line that is aligned with our conscious discipline training that we're going through. So at the end of our training and professional development, maybe sign something that we are going to follow, and not, say things that are hurtful to our students or staff. And my other one, and maybe, I hope I didn't miss it, but it's been an interesting 2 months. The teacher survey, trying to ask, I know teachers are burnout, and that is not a new story, but trying to get their input on what are their top 3 things that the board could do to support them. I don't know what those are. That's why we don't have the answers as a board, but getting their input. Obviously, we can't solve or meet all the demands, but we could probably meet one demand. Trying to figure out how to better support them as I see teachers leaving, and that's pretty scary.
Sue?
I don't have anything.
Just real quick, you know, this that could be at a meeting or could be kind of offline, but maybe a presentation with Trees for Change that was mentioned earlier today, and it kind of jogged my memory. Somebody from there, Amy Esposito, reached out to me, I don't know, a month or two ago, saying we'd love to do something with Osborne, you know. So I'll try to get her plugged in. She's with the executive director of Trees for Change, but would love to see that some kind of follow up with that. Maybe that's through the person who presented, but either way, looking at some opportunities to plant some more trees.
Nothing for me at the moment. All right, with that, thank you for being here. I adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.